Welcome, dear listener. Tonight, I have prepared for you a gentle journey, a story woven with soft moments, quiet places, and peaceful thoughts, a story meant to slow your heartbeat and rest your mind. Before we begin, if you enjoy spending these calm nights together, I invite you to subscribe and stay with us for more evenings like this one. Your support helps keep these stories alive, so we can keep wandering through new peaceful worlds together. Now, find your most comfortable position, let the weight of the day fall away, and allow my voice to carry you into the night. The night air felt cool and alive against my skin as I stepped out of the car, the sound of gravel crunching softly under my shoes. Above me, the sky was dark velvet scattered with stars, so many and so bright it felt as if I could reach up and pluck them from the air. The moon was full tonight, and its reflection stretched across the still waters of the lake like a silver ribbon leading all the way to the far shore. I stood there for a moment, breathing in the crisp scent of pine and damp earth, letting the quiet soak into me. The lake always greeted me like this, silent, patient, as though it had been waiting all along. Down the slope, the house sat at the water's edge, a small figure of warm light in the vast darkness. The amber glow from the porch lamp reached out like an open hand, guiding me home. I began walking slowly, my steps unhurried. The grass was cool beneath my shoes, still holding the faint moisture from the earlier rain, and each step released a faint earthy fragrance. Somewhere nearby, a night bird gave a soft, questioning call, then fell silent again. As I climbed the steps to the porch, the boards creaked in their familiar way, each groan and sigh like an old friend acknowledging my arrival. I paused with my hand on the railing, feeling the smooth, weather-worn wood beneath my fingers. From here, I could see the entire sweep of the lake, its surface so calm it mirrored the stars as perfectly as the sky itself. That I opened the door, and the warmth from inside wrapped around me instantly. The living room was softly lit by the glow of the fireplace, its flames no longer leaping but burning in a steady, golden rhythm. The scent of cedar logs and faint traces of smoke lingered in the air. I stepped in slowly, taking in the small comforts I'd missed: the knit blanket draped over the armchair, the stack of books by the low table, the faint ticking of the old clock on the wall. That I set the kettle on the stove, knowing it would take its time to warm. While I waited, I wandered over to the window that faced the lake. From here, the water looked like a sheet of polished glass, reflecting the moon and stars without a ripple. The trees on the far shore stood like dark sentinels, their outlines softened by the mist drifting low over the water. When the kettle began to hum, I added chamomile flowers, a touch of honey, and just a breath of lavender to the teapot. The steam curled upward, carrying with it the calming scent I had come to think of as this house's own quiet voice. I poured the tea into my favorite porcelain cup, the one with the tiny crack along the handle, a flaw that only made it dearer to me. That I carried the cup to the armchair by the fire and sank into its cushions. The warmth of the tea spread through my hands, and I let it rest there for a while before taking a sip. The taste was soft, floral, and sweet, melting into me like a warm blanket. I closed my eyes, letting the slow, steady crackle of the fire and the faint lap of water outside wrap around me. After a while, I rose and stepped out onto the porch again. The air was cooler now, the breeze carrying the scent of pine and the faint freshness of the lake. Overhead, The stars had multiplied, filling the sky with a brilliance only the countryside seemed to know. I walked down the short path to the dock. The boards cool beneath my bare feet, at the end of the dock. I sat down, letting my legs dangle above the water. The lake was perfectly still except for the faint ripples my presence made. I reached out with one hand, dipping my fingers into the cool surface, watching the circles expand slowly outward until they faded back into the calm. Somewhere across the water, a loon called, its note long and low, carrying a haunting beauty that seemed to echo across my chest. The rowboat bobbed gently beside the dock, its rope tied loosely to the post. I loosened the knot and let the boat drift a little before climbing in. The oars were smooth in my hands, worn from years of use. I rowed slowly, each pull sending a soft ripple behind me, the sound blending into the night. When I stopped rowing, the boat drifted, and I felt myself floating not just on the water, but between two skies, the one above me and its perfect reflection below. The air out here felt different, quieter, as if the lake itself were holding its breath. I leaned back against the bench, watching the stars. My body swayed gently with the movement of the water, and I closed my eyes, letting the rhythm carry me. After a time, I returned to the dock, tied the boat again, and made my way back to the house. Inside, the fire had burned low, its light pulsing gently. I lit a small oil lamp and wandered to the far end of the hall, where a study lay mostly untouched. The shelves here were filled with old books, their spines faded, their pages holding the faint scent of dust and time. Half hidden behind a stack of novels, I found a leather-bound journal. The cover was worn soft, and when I opened it, the pages inside were filled with neat, looping handwriting. The entries spoke of mornings spent fishing from the dock, evenings watching storms roll across the water, winters when the lake froze solid and the snow piled high against the porch. Each entry was quiet, unhurried, filled with the kind of observations that only come when life moves at the pace of the seasons. I read one about a summer night when the air was thick with the scent of blooming lilies, and the moonlight made the water glow pale blue. It felt like reading a memory I could almost claim as my own. I closed the journal gently, placing it back on the shelf with a kind of reverence. Returning to the armchair, I noticed the air had shifted. The faint smell of rain was drifting in through the open window. A low rumble of thunder followed, soft and far away. Then the first drops began to fall, tapping lightly against the roof and windows, the sound growing into a steady, soothing rhythm. The rain carried with it the scent of wet earth and pine, blending with the lingering warmth of the fire. That I pulled the blanket over myself and closed my eyes, listening to the rain's song. Each drop felt like it was erasing a little more of the day's weight, until all that remained was stillness. Time seemed to dissolve, leaving only the sound of the rain, the soft warmth of the blanket, and the steady beating of my own heart. Eventually, I rose and climbed the stairs to my bedroom. The sheets were cool and smooth, the pillows giving way beneath my head. Through the window, I could still see the lake, now darker and softer under the rain. The curtain swayed gently in the breeze, its movement matching the rhythm of my breathing. My eyelids grew heavier with each moment, and before long, sleep began to find me. When I awoke, the room was washed in the pale light of dawn. The rain had stopped, and a fine mist clung to the surface of the lake. I dressed warmly and stepped outside, the boards of the porch damp under my feet. The air was crisp and fresh, carrying the scent of wet pine needles that I walked along the shore, my steps slow, the grass still beaded with drops of water. The mist swirled gently around me, curling over the lake's surface like smoke. Somewhere nearby, a fish leapt from the water, breaking the silence with a single splash before disappearing again. Past the dock, a narrow path led into the pine forest. I followed it, the soft carpet of needles muffling my footsteps. The air here was rich with the scent of resin and earth, the light filtering through the branches in shifting patterns. A squirrel darted across the path ahead of me, pausing just long enough to meet my eyes before vanishing into the undergrowth that I wandered deeper until I reached a small clearing. Here, the world seemed even quieter, the only sounds the faint rustle of branches and the occasional call of a distant bird. I sat on a fallen log, breathing in the peace that seemed to live here. The forest felt timeless, as if it would remain exactly as it was now for 1,000 years. When I returned to the house, the sun had climbed higher, casting a golden light across the water. I made breakfast slowly, fresh bread, soft butter, a cup of tea, and carried it out to the porch. I ate while watching the light shift on the lake, the breeze creating small ripples that sparkled like silver. The afternoon passed in the easy rhythm of this place. I read for a while in the armchair, then swayed gently on the porch swing, wrapped in the blanket. The sunlight softened into evening, the sky deepening into shades of gold and rose to be by the time the sun dipped below the hills. The first stars had begun to appear. The lake mirrored them perfectly, so that once again I felt surrounded by sky. I stayed on the swing until night fully settled, the cool air brushing against my skin, the scent of pine growing stronger in the darkness. When I finally rose to go inside, I carried with me the deep, steady calm that only this place seemed to give me. And as I lay in bed once more, the lake outside reflecting the quiet stars, I knew that this night, like every night here, would carry me gently into sleep, cradled in the arms of the house by the quiet lake. Before we dive into tonight's second story, I invite you to find a comfortable place, settle in, and allow yourself to slow down. If you enjoy these peaceful night stories, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you can join me here again for more calming journeys. Tonight, we'll wander into a quiet mountain valley where an old cabin waits beneath the whispering pines. Let's begin. The cabin beneath the whispering pines. It was late evening when I finally reached the little dirt road that wound its way through the pines. The air was cool and crisp, the kind of mountain air that seems to carry a soft clarity with it, like every breath is rinsed clean by the forest. I had been walking for most of the afternoon, the weight of my small pack resting comfortably against my back, and now the gentle crunch of my boots on the path felt almost like a metronome, each step pulling me deeper into stillness. The trees leaned in close on either side, their tall trunks a deep brown against the fading sky. Every so often, a small gust of wind would move through the branches, creating a sound that felt like a sigh, long and low, almost as if the forest itself was breathing beside me. I slowed my pace, letting that sound settle in my chest. It had been too long since I'd been somewhere like this, somewhere that felt untouched by the rushing world. After another gentle bend in the path, I saw it, the cabin. It sat slightly back from the trail, nestled between two great pines whose branches almost met above its roof. The walls were weathered wood, a soft gray that told stories of many seasons. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, blending into the evening air, and the windows glowed faintly with a golden light that I stepped up onto the small wooden porch, my boots making a muted thud against the old boards. When I opened the door, a warm wave of air met me, the scent of pine logs burning in the stove and something faintly sweet like dried herbs. I set my pack down gently by the wall and closed the door behind me, feeling the quiet wrap around me. Inside, the cabin was simple but welcoming. A small rug lay in front of the stove, where the fire crackled softly. A wooden table sat near the window, and a single armchair faced the warmth. I lit a small oil lamp on the table, and its light joined the fire's glow, filling the room with a golden calm that I moved slowly, deliberately, as though each action deserved its own moment. I took off my boots, feeling the cool wood floor under my socks. I walked to the small kitchen nook, where a kettle sat beside a stack of tea tins. My fingers traced over the labels until I found one that smelled of chamomile and lavender. I filled the kettle with fresh water from a jug, set it on the stove, and listened to the faint hum as the heat began to rise. While the water warmed, I stepped outside again, this time without my pack, and stood on the porch. The sun had dipped completely behind the ridge, leaving the sky painted in soft blues and deepening purples. Stars were just beginning to appear, shy at first, and then more confidently, scattered across the darkness. The sound of a stream reached my ears, not far, just beyond the cabin, winding its way through the valley that I walked toward it slowly, feeling the earth beneath my feet, the smell of damp moss rising with each step. The stream was narrow, no wider than a few strides, but it moved with a steady, soothing rhythm. The moonlight caught on its surface, breaking into silver fragments that danced with the current. I knelt at the edge and dipped my fingers into the water. It was cold, but not sharply so, just enough to awaken my skin that I stayed there for a while, watching the way the water moved, how it never hesitated, never rushed, just flowed at its own pace. I let my mind follow it, imagining it winding down the valley, through the trees, past stones smoothed by years, until it joined something larger. The thought was strangely comforting, that even the smallest streams find their way to the great rivers eventually. When I returned to the cabin, the kettle was beginning to sing. I took it from the stove, poured the steaming water over the herbs, and watched as the pale color of the tea deepened. I carried the cup to the armchair, wrapped my hands around its warmth, and simply sat. The fire's glow flickered across the walls, and the only sounds were the crackle of wood, the faint whisper of the wind outside, and the occasional pop from the stove as I sipped the tea. I felt my shoulders sink lower, the tension I had carried for days slowly unwinding. My eyes wandered to the window, where the pines stood tall against the night sky, their shapes swaying gently. I imagined them as guardians of this place, standing year after year, through snow and rain, through storms and bright mornings, that I thought about how rare it is to be in a place that asks nothing of you. No demands, no noise, no hurry. Just the invitation to be, as you are. In this moment, I let the warmth of the tea fill me, the taste soft and floral, and when the cup was empty, I placed it on the table beside me. I leaned back in the chair, closed my eyes, and listened to the quiet. Time passed without me measuring it. At some point, I rose and added another log to the fire, watching the flames catch and rise again. I moved to the small bed in the corner, pulling back the quilt, which smelled faintly of cedar. I lay down, the mattress firm but welcoming, and pulled the quilt over me. The firelight flickered against the walls, and outside, the wind moved through the pines like a lullaby. My breathing slowed to match its rhythm. And there, in the stillness, I felt the kind of peace that settles not just in the body, but in the soul, deep, quiet, and whole. The lantern on my bedside table glowed softly, casting a golden circle of light across the wooden walls. Outside, the world was sinking deeper into the night, and the cool mountain air pressed gently against the windows. I pulled the blanket closer, feeling its familiar weight wrap around my shoulders like a friend's embrace. The day had left me tired, but in that pleasant way where every muscle feels loose and grateful, not heavy that I could still hear the whisper of the stream outside, its voice carrying the same rhythm it had since I arrived here. Sometimes I imagined it was speaking to me, not in words I could understand, but in the language of patience, telling me that nothing in this world needed to be rushed. I breathed slowly, in and out, letting its cadence shape my own heartbeat. The faint aroma of chamomile lingered from the cup of tea I'd finished earlier. Its warmth had long faded, but the comfort it gave seemed to stay with me. I let my head sink deeper into the pillow, the cotton fabric cool against my cheek. My eyes closed for a moment, and I could see again the image of the valley as it had been just before sunset, the light stretching like honey over the grass, the sky painted in shades of apricot and lavender. The air had been so still then that I could hear the distant call of an owl from the far ridge. I thought about how far I had come to be here. The city felt like another life. The endless traffic, the constant voices, the hurried footsteps on wet pavement. Here, time did not move in minutes or hours. It moved in the sway of branches, in the slow cooling of tea, in the shifting of shadows from one side of the valley to the other. I wondered if perhaps this was the pace life was meant to have all along, and somewhere along the way, I had just forgotten. I shifted onto my side, the blanket cocooning me more snugly, and let my thoughts drift. A faint creak from the wooden floorboards reminded me that the house was old, older than me, older than my parents. It had been here through decades of winters and springs, holding within it the scent of pine, smoke, and history. Sometimes, when the wind was strong enough, I could hear it whistling faintly between the boards, as if the house itself was humming a song it had learned long ago. That I opened my eyes just enough to watch the candle's flame tremble gently. The shadows it made on the wall looked alive, swaying like tall grass in a midnight breeze. The sound of my own breathing felt like part of the music of the room, slow, steady, unhurried. I noticed how still my mind was becoming, how each thought seemed softer at the edges, less urgent. The mountain beyond the window was cloaked in darkness now, but I could still make out the faint line of its silhouette against the star-washed sky. The stars were brighter here, as if distance from the noise had allowed them to come closer. I found myself counting them lazily, not because I wanted to reach a number, but because it felt good to notice them. Somewhere above, far beyond my sight, I imagined the quiet turning of planets, the slow unfolding of constellations older than all our worries. That I drew in a deeper breath and felt the scent of wood smoke drift faintly from the fireplace. The fire had died down to embers, but their warmth still reached me, a reminder that even things that seem small can hold on to heat for a long time. It made me think of kindness and how the smallest moments could stay with us for years. A stranger holding a door open, a friend's hand resting on our shoulder, a smile exchanged with someone we'd never meet again. Outside, a single leaf tapped against the window, stirred by the wind. It was a small, delicate sound, Yet in the stillness, it felt as though the night was reminding me it was alive too. Gently moving through its own rhythms, I let my mind wander to the morning that would come. I could see it already, lights spilling into the valley, mist curling lazily over the fields, the sound of birds beginning their gentle calls. But for now, that was a distant thing. The night still held me in its soft arms, and I had no reason to move from where I was then. Why breathing slowed further, matching the calm beat of the world outside. I could feel the weight of my body sinking deeper into the bed, the last traces of tension melting away. Everything felt exactly as it should be. Nothing missing, nothing urgent, nothing waiting to be done. Only the present moment, whole and quiet. Somewhere, in the distance, the owl called again. Its voice echoed gently across the valley, low and soothing, like a lullaby that had been sung for centuries. I closed my eyes once more, letting the sound wrap around me, carrying me into a deeper stillness that felt like the very heart of peace. The fire had long since settled into a slow, breathing rhythm of embers, their faint orange glow pulsing like a heartbeat. I leaned back in my chair, the wood creaking under my weight, and let my eyes half close. The night was a living thing now, not in a loud or demanding way, but in a quiet, steady presence, like an old friend sitting beside me that a faint breeze carried the scent of pine and earth, mingled with the delicate sweetness of wild jasmine growing somewhere unseen. Each inhale felt like it was cleansing some deep part of me, washing away whatever little dust of the day still clung to my thoughts. I could almost hear my heartbeat slowing, syncing with the rhythm of the world outside, but I thought of how rare it is to just be still. No errands to run, no messages to check, no deadlines chasing me. Out here, time didn't march forward, it swayed. It rocked me gently, like a lullaby I had known long before I could speak. From the far side of the valley, an owl called, a slow, deliberate sound that lingered in the air long after it ended. The reply came from somewhere closer, and I smiled, imagining the two in quiet conversation, speaking a language of patience and old wisdom. That I set my mug of warm tea on the little table beside me and let my hands rest in my lap. The cup's heat still lingered on my skin. In the hush of the evening, even that soft warmth felt like part of the world's embrace. My gaze drifted toward the old wooden fence at the edge of the property. Beyond it, the tall grass moved in slow waves under the moonlight, as though the earth itself was breathing. The silver glow gave each blade a halo, and for a moment, I could almost believe I was watching a sea, not a field. I let my eyes wander upward. The stars had multiplied since I last looked, their light sharper, clearer. I traced constellations I half remembered from childhood, recalling the nights when I'd lie on the roof of my parents' house, pointing them out to anyone who would listen. Out here, the sky wasn't just above me. It wrapped around, vast and infinite, as if I was at the center of some great and gentle dome. Somewhere deep inside, I felt a little shift, like a knot quietly loosening. It wasn't dramatic, just a subtle, almost imperceptible easing, as though my body finally realized it didn't need to hold so much anymore, that I didn't fight the drowsiness that began to brush at the edges of my thoughts. Instead, I leaned into it, letting the night carry me. My breathing slowed, matching the hush of the wind. My mind no longer reached forward or backward. It rested here, exactly where I was meant to be. And in that stillness, I knew nothing was urgent. Nothing needed to be solved right now. The world would keep turning, the stars would keep burning, and I would keep breathing. That was enough. The sound of the stream had softened into something almost like a lullaby, a low, steady whisper weaving through the stillness. I stayed seated on the wooden bench outside the cabin, letting the cool night air wrap around me like a second blanket. My eyes followed the fireflies drifting lazily in the darkness, their tiny lanterns blinking in a rhythm that felt like a conversation only the night could understand. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called once, its voice low and unhurried, as if even it understood that tonight was not a night for urgency. I drew a slow breath, tasting the faint sweetness of the pine-scented breeze. My body felt heavier in the best way, like the weight of the day had melted away, leaving only the soft stillness of this moment that I thought of how, in the city, nights were never truly dark. Even when the sky pretended to hold stars, the streetlights stole their magic. Here, the darkness was honest. It was deep, yet not frightening. A kind of darkness that felt like being cradled, as though the mountains themselves were keeping me safe, that I could hear my own heartbeat now, steady and gentle, syncing with the slow rhythm of the stream. My thoughts, which had been restless for weeks, seemed to untangle themselves without effort. I found myself smiling at nothing in particular, just the quiet joy of being here, in this place, in this moment. Inside the cabin, the soft crackle of the small fireplace reached my ears. It was like a whisper calling me in, but I wasn't ready to move just yet. The air outside carried a kind of peace I didn't want to break. I closed my eyes, leaning back against the bench, letting the sounds of the night become my only company. Somewhere far up the slope, I heard the faint trickle of snow melt, a sound so delicate it might have been imagined, yet it blended perfectly into the night's quiet symphony. The earth itself seemed to breathe around me, each exhale brushing across my skin in the form of a soft, cool wind. I thought of how life had been before I came here. The rush, the noise, the constant need to be somewhere, do something, be someone. All of it seemed distant now, like a dream fading with the morning light. Here, nothing demanded from me. The valley asked nothing but for me to listen. After a while, I rose slowly, the wooden boards of the porch creaking under my feet. I stepped inside, greeted by the golden glow of the fire. The scent of warm cedar filled the air, and I let the door close gently behind me. My footsteps on the wooden floor were soft, almost hesitant, as if I didn't want to disturb the cabin's quiet heartbeat. I poured myself a cup of herbal tea from the kettle resting near the fire. The steam curled upward in lazy spirals, carrying the scent of chamomile and wild mint. I wrapped my hands around the cup, feeling its warmth seep into my fingers. Sinking into the armchair by the window, I watched the night through the glass. The moon hung low and heavy, spilling silver light over the trees and turning the stream into a ribbon of liquid light. I sipped my tea slowly, each swallow a warm tide that eased through me. Time didn't feel like it was moving here. Minutes, hours, they all blended into one soft, endless moment. I let my mind wander gently, drifting between thoughts and memories, none of them sharp or hurried. Just fragments of warm days, kind faces, and small joys I'd almost forgotten. The fire's crackle became slower, gentler, like it too was preparing to sleep. I leaned back, letting my head rest against the chair. The last thing I remember before my eyes closed was the way the moonlight seemed to follow the curve of the stream, like it was guiding it somewhere secret, somewhere safe. I awoke to the sound of soft rain tapping against the wooden shutters of my small cabin. The air inside was cool and filled with the faint scent of cedar from the beams above me. I lay there for a long while, not rushing, simply letting the quiet weight of the morning wrap around me like a warm blanket. The rain was unhurried, each drop finding its own time to fall, as if the clouds were in no hurry to let go. Slowly, I sat up, running my hand along the quilt that had kept me warm through the night. The fabric still carried the faint, sun-warmed smell from when I'd hung it outside to air. I took in the room, the small table by the window, the wicker chair in the corner, the simple shelves lined with worn books. Everything felt still, as though the world outside had agreed to pause with me. I opened the shutters just enough to see out. The valley was veiled in mist, its edges blurred so that mountains and sky seemed to dissolve into one another. The rain's soft rhythm merged with the faraway sound of the river, now swollen with last night's rainfall. Somewhere out there, I imagined the deer moving slowly through the wet grass, their fur darkened by the rain, their steps quiet and careful. That I made tea, letting the steam curl into the air as I stood by the window. The cup warmed my hands, and the scent of chamomile mixed with the faint smell of rain drifting in. I sipped slowly, each swallow feeling like it eased something in me I hadn't realized was tight. The tea didn't just warm my body, it seemed to slow my thoughts, pulling me deeper into the moment. After a while, I stepped outside onto the covered porch. The wooden boards creaked gently under my bare feet. From here, I could see droplets clinging to every blade of grass, each one catching what little light seeped through the clouds. The rain had softened to a fine drizzle, just enough to blur the distance. I breathed in deeply, the air so fresh and cool it felt like a quiet cleansing for my lungs. That I walked out into the garden path, the earth beneath my feet soft and dark with rain. I let my fingertips brush the leaves as I passed, each leaf holding its own tiny world in the form of a water droplet. The herbs I'd planted weeks ago seemed to be thriving, their green deeper and richer after the rain. The lavender swayed slightly, releasing a scent that mingled with the damp earth. Beyond the garden, I followed the narrow trail that wound its way toward the river. The path was quiet except for the occasional flutter of wings as a bird took shelter under the pines. I slowed my steps deliberately, as if matching the pace of the world around me. The rain-speckled moss beneath the trees looked so vivid it almost seemed to glow. When I reached the river, I stood for a long time watching the way the water moved. It wasn't rushing wildly, but flowing with a steady, unbroken grace, carrying the memory of the mountains down to the valley. I crouched near the bank, letting the mist dampen my face, and trailed my fingers through the cold current. It was as if the water itself carried some ancient calm, one that had been flowing here long before I arrived, and would continue long after I left. I sat down on a flat rock, pulling my knees up, and let the quiet seep into me. The sound of the water became my heartbeat, the cool air my breath. In that moment, there was no past and no future, just the steady presence of the river, the gentle drizzle, and the soft moss beneath my hands. As the night deepened, the sounds of the valley grew softer still, as though the world had placed a hand gently over its heart. I remained by the open window, watching the moon drift across the dark sky, its silver light bathing the wooden floor in a soft glow. My breath was steady now, matching the rhythm of the world outside. That I thought about how far I had come, not in miles, but in stillness. Just days ago, my mind was like a restless ocean, waves crashing against thoughts I couldn't control. Now, it was more like this quiet stream I could hear faintly in the distance, winding patiently through the valley. The faint scent of lavender floated in from the garden below, wrapping around me like an invisible blanket. I closed my eyes, imagining the flowers swaying in the moonlight, their blooms whispering secrets to the night air. Somewhere beyond the hills, a night bird called, a sound both lonely and comforting, reminding me that even in darkness, life speaks softly that I move to my bed, the sheets cool and smooth beneath my hands. Lying down, I could feel the wooden frame creak gently, as if it, too, was settling in for the night. My eyes followed the play of moonlight across the ceiling beams, tracing patterns until they blurred into shadows. The wind whispered through the open window, carrying the smell of pine, earth, and rain that had fallen earlier in the day. Each breath I took felt like it was carrying something away, an old worry, a lingering ache, a shadow of yesterday. And each exhale left me lighter, like a leaf drifting on still watered eye in the quiet. I thought about how healing doesn't always come in sudden bursts. Sometimes it's in the slow, unnoticed moments. The way the air feels cooler after a storm, or how the stars seem brighter after you've taken the time to really look. I realized that tonight, I wasn't just resting. I was arriving at a place in myself that I'd been searching for without knowing. The world outside continued its gentle lullaby. The stream whispered, the leaves murmured, the wind hummed against the eaves. My breathing grew slower, deeper. My body felt heavier, but in the most comforting way, like the earth was holding me close. And as my eyes finally drifted shut, I let the night carry me. I let the soft, unseen hands of peace guide me into dreams where the valley would still be waiting, and the air would always smell of pine and lavender, and the moon would always know the path to my window. And in that moment before sleep fully claimed me, I knew this quiet was mine, and I was home. And so, as the night's gentle music fades, and the soft whispers of the wind settle into a quiet lull, I want to thank you for spending this time here with me, for letting me share a little piece of peace, a corner of stillness, a moment where nothing is rushed and everything simply is. I hope this story brought you comfort, maybe a few moments of reflection, and perhaps even helped your mind drift to a softer, calmer place. Because in the end, we all deserve nights like this, nights where we slow down, breathe deeply, and remember that life can still hold gentle moments, no matter how loud the world becomes. If you found yourself feeling even a little more at ease, I'd be so grateful if you could show your support. A simple, like, lets me know these quiet stories are finding their way to those who need them. Sharing this with someone you care about might give them the gift of a peaceful night, too. And subscribing means we can keep meeting here, night after night, building a little sanctuary of calm together. There's so much more to come, more stories, more still moments, more journeys under quiet skies. So, if you haven't yet, tap that subscribe button and maybe even the little bell so you'll always know when the next story is waiting for you. Thank you, truly, for being here. You're not just a listener, you're part of this little circle of peace we're creating. Until we meet again, may your nights be gentle, your dreams be kind, and your heart be at rest. Good night and sleep well.